Hi everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit today about paraphrasing. I see that this is something that students struggle with a lot. I wanted to talk about both the citations when it comes to paraphrasing and what you actually are looking to do when you paraphrase and when you quote. So when you use a direct quote, you want to use a signal phrase, put your quote in quotation marks, and then before the punctuation, use your in-text citation. If you're using APA format, you're going to use the author and the year. If you're using MLA format, you're going to use the author and the page number. Don't write P or page or anything like that. Don't use a comma, just author and the page number for MLA. Remember that the punctuation goes after the citation. A good way to remember this is to remember that the in-text citation is actually part of your sentence. So if you put the period here and then you put your in-text citation, it would end up being part of the next sentence, and that wouldn't be correct. So that's just an easy way to remember it. When you paraphrase, you absolutely still have to use your in-text citation. When you use somebody else's thoughts, ideas, statistics, facts, anything like that, you have to give credit for that, even if it's in your own words. If you say 2 out of 10 people prefer Coca-Cola to Pepsi, I know I used that example in another thing, but if you say that, you have to cite that. You can't just throw a fact out there. You can't just put a definition out there. You can't just use somebody else's ideas and think that you don't have to cite it because it's in your words. You still have to cite it. So when you use a paraphrase, you paraphrase it, and then you use your in-text citation. So I just want to talk, though, about how to create a paraphrase. So let's take a quote. We have John F. Kennedy's famous quote, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Now, I would generally say that if you're going to use a quote like this, you should directly quote it because it's a really famous quote and you're not going to say it better than Kennedy said it. But let's just say you wanted to paraphrase this quote. It's just came to my head. It's an easy one to remember. So you wouldn't want to say, "Don't ask what your country can do for you. Instead, you should ask what you should do for your country." That would be plagiarism, flat out plagiarism. Teachers probably wouldn't report you to school for that, but there's a good chance you're going to get a 0. You're going to get a lot of points taken off. You can't just change a few words. You have to completely change it into your own words. So what I wrote here was JFK reminded people that it was more important to serve one's country rather than worrying about how their country could provide for them. This is pretty close to the original. You definitely wouldn't want to get any closer to the original than what you have here. You don't want to just use synonyms. You don't want to say, don't inquire, or inquire not what the land you live in can do for you. You don't just use synonyms. You really want to put it in your own words. A good way to do this is to rewrite it a bunch of times. So say if after I wrote this, then I would just write it again in my own words, and then write it again, and then write it again. Usually 3 times you'll get a paraphrase that's different enough from your quote to be safe and not be too close to the original. But after you paraphrase, you want to go back and just double check and make sure that it's not too close to the original. And that you didn't just use synonyms or accidentally use a big chunk, because sometimes it's just in your head. With a famous quote like this, you're probably going to know whether you used the same words or not, but if you just read something in an article and then you write it in your own words, you may accidentally plagiarize without even realizing it. I think everybody who has written enough papers has probably done that at some point in their life. Just read something and then accidentally wrote it just a little too close to what they had read without realizing that they did it. So you really want to paraphrase with purpose. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say to you guys today. If you have any questions about paraphrasing, quoting, or citing, you can always message me. Unless you're not one of my students, and then you should probably message your own professor. Bye.